Hi, I'm Mark Regev, and I'm here with my co-host, Ruthie Blum, for another episode of Israel Undiplomatic.
And we'd like to ask you to please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications.
You know, yesterday was Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which in the Jewish calendar is a fast day. And it's a day where Jews traditionally remember the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. And it was also this year a day where two ministers in the Israeli government, the most prominent among them, Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister for National Security, decided to go up to the Temple Mount, and not only to go up to the Temple Mount, but to announce that they were going to pray and that Jews are allowed to pray on the Temple Mount, or something along those words, which immediately caused a crisis. And a lot of people were saying this is typical Ben-Gvir. He's just a rabble-rouser on the right, trying to, act irresponsibly. There was even leaks from the security services saying that Jews could be killed because of this action. And I was wondering what you were thinking about this.
Well, first of all, this issue has been going on for decades because after the 1967 war, when we said the Temple Mount is in our hands, we promptly handed over the keys to the Islamic Waqf.
Well, stop for a moment. That's consistent with all Israeli policy, which has been since the city has been reunified, as you say correctly, in 1967, in the Six-Day War. Since that unification, Israeli policy has been live and let live, and to give religious freedom to all the faiths.
Except not to Jews.
Now, let me finish. The principle has been religious freedom for all the faiths, and that each religious community autonomously administers its own religious sites. In other words, the chief rabbinate, the Jewish holy site of the Western Wall, the Christian denominations according to historic understandings and agreements, the different Christian holy sites, and the Muslim Waqf, the Temple Mount.
Okay, the Muslim Waqf have control over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but the Temple Mount is actually the holiest site in Judaism. Now, having said that, this is not really one of my issues. It doesn't happen to be. It's also very complicated because ultra-Orthodox Jews think that no Jew should go up to the Temple Mount, I think, until the Messiah comes or whatever. I'm not knowledgeable enough on that topic. So Ben-Gvir created a scandal also with the Orthodox parties, not only with the left wing and not only with Prime Minister Netanyahu, who said, no, my policy, and I'm the Prime Minister, is not to change the status quo on the Temple Mount. So that's where we are today. However, the entire world that has been treating Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, those two, like some kind of anti-hero rock stars where I don't know, months ago nobody had ever heard of them, and they're like the big bogeymen in the world, and people don't even know what it is that they do that is so hateful, supposedly. And one of what the left likes to claim is that they are running the show and that Netanyahu is a puppet in their hands, which is nonsense. But getting back to your issue, it may be one of the reasons everybody went so crazy, and even the Secretary of State of the United States, Antony Blinken, got into the act, and this is outrageous, and the UN Security Council saying it's a provocation that Ben-Gvir went up to the Temple Mount. Now, the word provocation, this is the word used to condemn Israel for all kinds of things, including settlements in Judea and Samaria. Now, if it turned out that actually settlements were the problem, or the Temple Mount were the problem, I might concede that, yes, we shouldn't provoke. But we have learned time and again that they have nothing to do with anything that's going on. It's a false narrative. The terrorists and the heads of the Palestinian Authority and Iran and all the terrorist groups, what they claim is, and this war, the current war also uses the word the Temple Mount flood, the flooding of the Temple Mount. They use that as a rallying cry to terrorists to kill Jews. They say the Jews are storming, they're going to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is a lie. When Jews go up to the Temple Mount, they don't go into the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They just stand there and pray a little bit.
The truth is, Ruthie, they've been saying that most famously since 1929, where the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, later on a Nazi collaborator and war criminal, but put that aside, he said the Jews are out to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque and rebuild their temple.
Right.
And the truth is, 1929 is what? That's like 90 years ago? 95 years ago?
Way before the Six-Day War.
No, but why do I say that? Is because if the Jews were really trying to do that, you'd think we would have done it already because...
Exactly. And by the way, PA president, I don't like to call him president because it's bogus, but PA leader, Mahmoud Abbas, has said things like the Jews are defiling the Al-Aqsa Mosque with their filthy feet. So let me tell you who's been defiling the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Arabs praying there. There are young guys who go there. Whenever there is an intifada or some kind of uprising or start of an uprising, they're inside the mosque defiling it, playing soccer, amassing rocks to throw at Jews below at the Western Wall. So, don't give me that crap.
There's also, more recently, after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, that one of the employees of the Waqf was giving a religious sermon, and he, of course, praised the Hamas leader. And I believe the Israeli police called him into first questioning.
Well, thank God for that.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. First of all, Ben-Gvir is not, he's not running the show. Netanyahu is running the show. Netanyahu has caved to very little of very few of Ben-Gvir's demands. So that.
But I do think Ben-Gvir needs to be condemned. Forget the problems.
No, he needs to be condemned for one thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He should stop threatening to bring down the government because it's nonsense. Because if he brings down the government, he's history, and the left will take over.
So I think he has to be condemned for two things. Number one, when you're a member of the opposition or when you're just a street activist like he was in the past, you can say whatever you want, right? Within the law.
But he's a member of the government.
He's the member of the government, and he can't say that this is government policy when it's not government policy. That's irresponsible, and that's dangerous, and that's not democratic.
Exactly.
If he believes that Jews should be allowed to pray on the Temple Mount, which is not according to the status quo, and Netanyahu is opposed, he should raise it in meetings. He should say, this is my position. He should try to get a majority of the cabinet behind him, which he won't succeed in doing. But to say, there's a concept in parliamentary democracy.
Yes, that's right.
Parliamentary democracy is a principle of collective responsibility.
That's right.
And he cannot do this. This is just not democratic behavior. It's not done, and it's very, very problematic. It's even more problematic because as in charge of the Israeli police, they're the ones who are supposed to enforce the guidelines of the government. And so it's very difficult, I think, for the Israeli police to come and arrest people who are doing things that are illegal under the status quo, according to the Israeli government.
Well, they're not illegal. They are against protocol.
No, the Israeli government has ruled that you can't pray on the temple.
No, it's forbidden, but it's not actually illegal. It's not in law books, as it happens.
Correct.
Okay, so that's a gray area.
But theoretically, people who pray, Jews who go up and pray on the Temple Mount, and then we can have a separate discussion because you can argue that it's an infringement on their religious freedom, though, as you said correctly, according to Orthodox Judaism, it is forbidden to go to the Temple Mount. That's a decision not only of the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim, who have said that that's Avadia Yosef, the leader of Shas, famously said so, but also who was recognized by many as the leader of modern religious Zionism, Rabbi Kook, also said Jews can not go up and pray on the Temple Mount.
Exactly. So that's actually a fight going on within different religious circles, because the truth is, let's face it, there are issues that are religious that secular Israel gets in on the act on, when in fact that's a little silly on our part because A, we don't have enough knowledge, and B, does it affect me? Do I insist on going up to the Temple Mount to pray? No, I don't personally, okay? So then you start choosing sides in an argument, and my side of the argument always has to do with who's being a hypocrite, all right? And one of the things that really drives me nuts is that this issue, you realize that Yair Lapid, the head of our opposition, is now, he wants to join forces with the head of Shas, Aryeh Deri, to forbid Jews going onto the Temple Mount and
enshrine it. Enshrine it. It already is forbidden. It's
forbidden, but he wants to
make it. He wants to the Knesset to make a statement or something.
Make a law, some kind of pass some kind of legislation. Now, talk about ridiculous. This is a guy who doesn't care a hoot about any religious rituals or anything like that, and that he's also somebody who attacks the religious community repeatedly, and now
but the important thing is that Ben-Gvir here, it has to be understood, especially by our listeners and viewers from abroad, that Ben-Gvir is representing only a fraction within the Orthodox community.
Exactly.
How large that fraction is, I don't want to say, because it could be growing, but it's definitely a minority opinion within Orthodox Judaism.
It is a minority opinion. It is. But my point is that the whole world should go crazy because a bunch of Jews went up onto the Temple Mount.
No, but let's be clear. It's not just the whole world. Here I agree there's a lot of hypocrisy because they wouldn't, when Hamas does what it does or when extreme Palestinians, they're much more tolerant sometimes. But it's not just that Ben-Gvir, in my opinion, broke with collective responsibility that he has as a member of the cabinet and is acting as an anarchist and a government minister at the same time. But is it not also that Netanyahu came down him hard like a ton of bricks and saying this is unacceptable and this is not government policy, because he understands, the Prime Minister, that if Israel wants to move forward with Arab countries and Muslim countries in peace, I'm not talking about Iran, I'm talking about moderate Muslim countries in North Africa, in the Gulf area, Saudi Arabia specifically, we have to be very, very, very sensitive about Muslim feelings on the Temple Mount. And here, I think there's a difficult issue, which I have resolved, is that though people have, I believe in religious freedom and so forth, but if Israel acting to change the status quo on the Temple Mount will cause negative ripples throughout the Middle East, negative blowback, will play into the hands of the Iranians and Hezbollah and Hamas, I think Netanyahu is 100% correct in saying what has been the status quo is what will be in the future. We don't need to open up a front against the Muslim world. We don't need to open up a front where we are going to undermine our friends in the Muslim world who have either made peace with us or want to make peace with us in the future.
All right, so let me just say, though, the timing of this. Now, just as Itamar Ben-Gvir, his timing was not accidental because it was Tisha B'Av, which commemorates the destruction of the two temples, the ancient temples. But it was also not accidental that the outcry came as almost was linked to what's going on in Gaza and hostage negotiations and Iran. And this is what drives me crazy. There is no linkage, all right? And when you say we don't want to open up another front, excuse me, it's the Muslim world, not all of it, that opened up a front against us. We don't open up fronts against anybody. And it's about time that somebody says it. And then we have our friends in Washington. We need them constantly at the ready to criticize us every single step of the way. And we have the Vice President Kamala Harris. So this brings us to our next topic about the lies spread about our taking out several important terrorist officers in Gaza in a building that is a school compound and inside a mosque. And we launched a really, really precise strike, killing only terrorists. And Kamala Harris and everybody else jumped on us and has said that we bombed a school. And that lie is just being spread in the New York Times, everywhere. And once the lie gets out there, put it back in the bottle. Can I respectfully
disagree with some of the things you just said? First of all, we did...
You don't have to respectfully.
No,
you could disagree.
I think you're wrong. I think the way you phrased that is incorrect. Number one, we did bomb a school, but it was a school facility that had been taken over by Hamas
and no children
and Islamic
were
Jihad, and that the school was being used as a military installation. Yes. And therefore, under international law, under the rules of armed conflict, it becomes a legitimate target. It's like with a hospital or like with any other humanitarian facility. I remember learning many years ago that if there's a bridge and it's a bridge is a civilian thing. You can't target a bridge. But the minute the enemy moves its tank across that bridge, you can blow up the bridge. So it's the same here.
Right. So what
the
I'm saying
Hamas
is,
has chosen to turn the school into a military target.
So where is
but
the
it's not
international
correct.
community?
So first of all, the international community should condemn that, but we shouldn't oversay and say it wasn't a school. It was a school. You can't deny that it was a school.
We haven't
Second
denied
point,
that it was a school and a mosque. We have said it was appropriated by Hamas.
Yeah.
It was a weapons depot. It was a headquarters for terrorism.
Correct.
And we killed no children
That's
and
the
no
first.
women, and the lies that were spread.
So I want to say, and I've
By
read
the way,
about this.
one more thing.
Yeah.
Do you realize it was such a precise strike that we hit only one floor in the building where these terrorists were? It's amazing. We should be lauded for that.
Okay. So I want to go on saying, now that Hamas is there, I think we can criticize, though she didn't talk about specific numbers, the vice president, but a lot of the international coverage, because all the reports about innocent people being killed, women and children and so forth, all those reports were based on the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health in Gaza. In other words, they're Hamas's numbers, and it's clear that Hamas has an interest in exaggerating. It's called atrocity propaganda. They're doing it from day one, right? Every time Israel strikes at Hamas, we're only killing innocent civilians. We've never killed a single terrorist. That's the Hamas game plan. That's the way they operate, okay? And that the international media and international leaders still give credence to Hamas, put out statements and numbers is, I think, atrocious. There was even, I think it was on NPR, the American news radio network, they interviewed the head of the ambulance services in the Gaza Strip, and he was saying it's genocide and it's terrible, and they just, and I'm sorry, that's a senior person in the Gaza Strip. He has to be a Hamas person. He wouldn't have his job if he wasn't associated with Hamas in one way or another. And yet he's interviewed as if he's some objective. What's the word? But I do think you went over the top when you said. I thought you went over the top when you said we didn't hit a school. We did hit a school. We justifiably hit the school. But I think
I will rephrase that.
Okay.
We hit a school building compound.
Okay. I will also say
it wasn't a school in session with children sitting facing a blackboard with a teacher teaching them math. And by the way, when school in Gaza is in session, as in the Palestinian Authority, the lessons they're being taught, for example, in math class, is if you kill 2 Jews and you kill 2 more, how many Jews have you killed?
I understand all that. And I think now that you've rephrased the way you've said that, I'm willing to accept what you've said. But I think you also made a mistake. And here I don't know, but you said no women and children were killed point blank, right? And I don't know that for a fact because I know often in military operations, you can have unintended collateral damage. And if we killed 30 terrorists, and that's the number that I think the IDF put out, the number 31.
31, I think, yeah.
So is it possible there were also 4 uninvolved civilians that were killed? It's possible. So to say point blank, no one was killed. Once again, Hamas is responsible for those deaths because Hamas has turned the civilian side, in this case a school, into a legitimate military target.
This brings us to the humanitarian corridor that was just hit by Hamas, attacked as Gazans were trying to go through it. And now we had to close it. And now we're being attacked for denying humanitarian goods and humanitarian and a pathway for civilians to move from one place to another. Now, my point is, we know this is going on. We know they're terrorists. We know they use their people as human shields. We know all of that. And yet, the Security Council doesn't seem to know it, and the White House and State Department don't seem to know it, because when they say so, they right away add, but that doesn't justify, you can't have this, and 2 wrongs don't make a right, and all that. Those are supposed to be our allies. Now, let me tell you another thing. The Arab world, the Arab states that made peace with us in the Abraham Accords, one thing that's known about them, and behind closed doors, the same thing with Saudi Arabia, is that their concern for the Palestinians is really very minimal. Okay, they don't say that publicly. Publicly, they say independent statehood for the Palestinians, etc. But notice that when they signed the Abraham Accords, They signed it without the Palestinians being part of it because the idea of the Abraham Accords was peace doesn't have to go through the Palestinian Authority. On the contrary, they want to join, as former President Trump said. You want to join? Welcome, okay? But not...
It's even more than that. At the time of the Abraham Accords, I remember the things that the Palestinian President Abu Mazen said about the Emiratis. Very, very, very strong
Awful
words.
things.
And the Emiratis answered back with strong words. And in the end, I think Abu Mazen had to back down. But the idea across the Arab world in the past, they were willing to subcontract out their foreign policy to the Palestinians, and everything had to be approved by them. I think today more and more Arab countries are saying...
Oh, guess what?
Yes.
So I read a report today that the United Arab Emirates said that they will only help in the day after Gaza, help police or, guard the border or whatever it is to help with civil society in Gaza on condition that the Palestinian Authority be ruling Gaza. Now, we can't have that, and Netanyahu said so. We cannot have the Palestinian Authority ruling Gaza. Now, there are two reasons for that. One is that they're willing to make a sort of peace with Hamas, even though they're terrible rivals. But something even worse. The most popular person in the Palestinian Authority in an Israeli jail that Hamas has requested as part of its hostage deal is to release Marwan Barghouti in the first stage of the so-called deal that we don't, I'll believe it when I see it, all right? Now, Marwan Barghouti is an arch-terrorist responsible for the death of many, many, many Israelis, and he's serving 5 life sentences in an Israeli prison. Now, if Hamas wants him to take over the PA and then rule Gaza, you realize that what that means is, okay, so we won't have Sinwar, we'll have Marwan Barghouti. So when the United Arab Emirates says only if the Palestinian Authority is ruling there, you're wondering, okay, either they're doing this just for public relations and really they don't care, or they're backtracking, or they're seeing Israel be weak in this war and capitulate to Washington, which was to begin with the only reason. One of the reasons they approached Israel was because of Netanyahu's speech to Congress in 2015, and they were so impressed that he stood up to Obama about the Iran's nuclear program. So if they see us weakening and capitulating to Biden, and we do spend a lot of time thanking and the U.S. administration.
I think we do. When the Americans are giving us support, I think it's right that we say thank you. It's like in any relationship. You don't take your partner for granted, and it's important, right? It's important to express appreciation. And now, right, let's say when Iran hasn't been threatening to attack Israel and sent missiles, and President Biden has moved U.S. Navy assets to the region, I think we should be saying thank you. And when they're expediting munitions to Israel so we can defend ourselves and win this war, we should also say thank you. When we disagree with them, there's no need to say thank you. When we disagree, we say we disagree with you on this or that point. But when they do things that are good for us and we appreciate, we should say thank you.
Hey, Mr. Career Diplomat who believes that everything is based on interests, okay?
Right, yeah.
So the fact that we are on the front lines, not only of this war, we've been on the front lines in the Middle East, the only democracy in the Middle East, et cetera, for years and years, okay? Now, what I'd like to know is where's the thank you from America that we risked our soldiers. We bear the brunt of Iran's, we're going to wipe first the little Satan off the map and then the great Satan. I'd like to know, yes, okay, we thank you for doing that. But you want to tell me that when America moves warships over here and everything, they're doing us a favor? It's in their interest. And yes, it's all fine to say thank you. I would like to hear some morsel of gratitude, which, by the way, many people in Congress have expressed when Netanyahu went there and addressed that, when, most of the Democrats, of course, boycotted.
Not most. That's incorrect.
Not most. Excuse me. Many, a really large portion of them. But the ones who didn't boycott it sat stone-faced and didn't applaud. My point is that the acknowledgement that if you really believe that everything we all do is based on interests, then America, it's in America's interest that we be strong, that we defeat Hamas, that we stand up to Hezbollah, that we stand up to Iran, instead of saying, no, take the win, don't fight back, don't kill too many people, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. So that's all. I'm waiting for a thank you from Biden.
So you shouldn't wait for a thank you, but it's right that we do what is the right thing for us and what is truthful. And when the Americans are supportive of Israel, and we've seen it recently, and if Iran does shoot missiles again at Israel, we'll take down a lot of them, but the Americans will also and do their part.
But it's in their interest to do so.
I didn't say it wasn't in their interest.
Like they did us a favor.
So I think even when someone does something because it's in their interest too, if it helps you, you can express appreciation.
Right.
I think it's
can
important.
It be reciprocal? You said, your partner, you should express appreciation for your partner. Does it not work both ways?
I think it should work both ways. With that, I agree. But here you said at the beginning when you were talking about that, I think you said that the Secretary of State had called Ben-Gvir's visit to the Temple Mount provocative, and you made a comparison with settlements.
Yes.
And here I want to address an issue that some of our listeners and viewers abroad might not have thought about. But, you get sometimes this narrative, also sometimes, from foreign officers in Europe and North America, that the whole problem is that of the settlements. And only if we solve the issue of the settlements would we have peace and everything would be fine. I'm sure, you've met people like that too.
They call them an obstacle.
An obstacle. But let's be clear, where Israel has been most forthcoming on settlements is actually Gaza. Whereas you will recall, Ariel Sharon in 2005 took down 20 settlements. And he not only took down the settlements, but the settlers who didn't want to leave, he forcibly sent in the Israeli police and military, and he forced them to evacuate. Right?
Yes.
And so according to the logic of all these people who say it's all about the settlements, you would think that Gaza will be Israel's most quiet border, right? Because there are no settlements in Gaza. We took them down. We actually pulled back to, let's wait for it, but the truth is we pulled back to the 1967 line in Gaza. Now, no one claims that Israel is occupying any part of the Gaza Strip.
Yes, they do. That's what I'd like to say. Do you know that every single panel, every single international interview I am at, they introduce it by saying occupied Gaza.
Well, it is now.
It is now.
We've reoccupied it.
No, but we are fighting a war there.
Yeah, no, but we've reoccupied that.
But to call that it was as though this is occupied territory and that we're now, even all these years they've been saying that. And when you say to them, wait a minute, no, it's in effect occupied because they're landlocked. No, excuse me, what about the Egyptian border? Let's not get into that right now. But the idea somehow that Israel is at fault for everything, and now we know if the conflict here were about land, real estate, okay, and then you might have said, okay, look, why build settlements here and there? Because, we need to make a land swap or something like that. We learned a long time ago that it has nothing to do with that. And therefore, if you know that something is not the culprit, then why continue to further the line that it is? So again, that's a provocation and that's a provocation, which just one more point about Ben-Gvir. It may be provocative and it may annoy Netanyahu because what does he need that headache for? But what we know for sure is that it really has not, that no Palestinian in his right mind believes that the Jews on the Temple Mount are storming the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which never happened. It's not happening. And what they see is some Jews praying to themselves, okay? So just do me a favor.
But let's stop for a moment. First of all, no evidence at all that Ben-Gvir is involved in any of this, but there was, you will recall, we were both living in Israel at the time in the mid-1980s, there was actually, wasn't to destroy the Temple Mount, but there was a Jewish underground that talked about blowing up the mosque or something, and they were arrested for it by the government.
And they were considered fringe, insane, nobody supported them.
Yeah.
Now, and Ben-Gvir doesn't say blow up this
No, he just says Jews have the right to pray.
I should be allowed, just like anybody else, to go up there and say a prayer.
Correct.
Not in the Al-Aqsa
But I also
Mosque.
want to take issue with what you said a few moments ago. Ruthie, it's like I'm your diction guide. I think you overspoke. You said they are hypocritical and you put the UN and the United States together in the same sentence. And I think that is wrong. It's like saying there's a guy comes into my house and he wants to kill me, and I have a fight with my mother-in-law and I hate them both, right? It's not true. There's a difference between the guy who comes into your house and wants to kill you and between having a fight with your mother-in-law. It's not the same. The UN, unfortunately, as an institution, is systematically biased against Israel. It's been called a Center for Anti-Semitic Dialogue. You just have to go to the different UN institutions.
You're right.
The United States, we can have disagreements with them, but to put them on the same level as the UN.
Hold on. You can't say the United States. You can say the United Nations because there is a pattern there.
All across the institution.
The United States, you can't really say that because they're the American people there, and then there's the U.S. administration. And every 4 years in America, you have a different administration, sometimes the same one.
Yeah.
Okay. It remains to be seen which one will be elected in November. But there is a distinction. There is a big distinction between different administrations and how they treat Israel. This is not to say that the American people, according to all polls, are overwhelmingly pro-Israel. We know that. But again, American people don't make big decisions. It's just as I would say the majority of Israeli people, we don't know this because what you see in the media and what you see on the streets and demonstrations, what you see is something, not an accurate picture of what most Israelis think right now about victory in Gaza, about the hostage families and everything. We don't really know. But we do know that the Biden administration has been extremely critical. Before we were mass murdered on October 7th, Biden wouldn't even invite Netanyahu to Washington. He gave him a total cold shoulder. We had to be slaughtered en masse in order to get Biden to say, oh, this is terrible. Let me come to Israel and show you that I'm the first American president who's shown up in wartime in Israel and all that.
Sorry, but I think you are denigrating unnecessarily. He did a right thing. He was very much appreciated that he came here during those first early couple of weeks.
You appreciated him. I was suspicious from the beginning.
You can be suspicious. Maybe that's your nature, but he did the right thing, and I'm glad he came. And as for the administration, and with this I think we have to finish because our time has come to an end, unfortunately, until next week.
Okay.
But I read a book about Obama's foreign policy, a critical book. And one of the interesting things I said when he used to meet his European counterparts, he came out of those meetings saying, those guys don't like Israel, do they? And the truth is, as difficult as sometimes can be our relations with an American president, with certain administrations, yes, it's still much better than it is with almost every other government on the planet. And because America is still today, and hopefully will continue to be, the number one superpower on the planet, that is something that we do need to say thank you for.
Well, I will just add one thing. If I have to have the last word, being the woman, I have to have the last word. It remains to be seen if really America retains its superpower status. It certainly hasn't been behaving like a superpower, including with its behavior towards American hostages in Gaza.
And with those words, I look forward to seeing you next week.
Ditto.